Cindy.
I call this meeting to order. Meeting of the Denville Township Board of Education is being held due to the state of emergency declared by the governments of the state of New Jersey and the United States regarding COVID-19. This board meeting is being held via video conference and in person. Electronic and regular notice of this meeting was provided to the Daily Record and the Star Ledger of Morris County, has been delivered to the township clerk, has been posted on the bulletin board of the Board of Education office, and at each of the school buildings in the district. Roll call, please.
Mr. Capello?
Here.
Mr. Cass?
Here.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Luer?
Here.
Mr. Kim?
Here.
Mrs. Gould? Mrs. Wagner? Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Gould and Mrs. Wagner send their apologies. They're not going to be able to make it tonight. We do not have a need for an executive session, so at this time we'll have a pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice
for all.
We have no special presentations tonight, so we'll move on to the superintendent's comments. Dr. Forte. So we all use the microphone.
Yes.
Okay, so our school status. As of right now, Valley View has switched to full remote for February 8th and 9th. That's due to the COVID cases. There will be more information tomorrow. I have a conference call with the school staff and as well as the health department to determine whether or not we need to extend it. Our snow situation, we haven't used 2 studies out of 5. We just reminded we're not permitted to use the ladies. The fact that it's a 4-hour day, and so we can't really delay. So we have used virtual days in lieu of the ladies. It looks like most likely tomorrow we will be switching to a virtual day, and I'll get that message out as soon as I can.
Hey, Cindy, Steve.
Mike, are you having trouble hearing us?
Yeah, I mean, you're a little bit better, Dino, than Steve, but it's really hard to hear all of you. I couldn't understand anything from Steve's report.
It's very mumbled.
Yes, because of your mask.
Yeah. Does this sound better?
No. It's because of this, because it's not going to that. Well, really, can't hear me that way.
Should I put my comments in the chat? Does that make sense?
Steve, how about you unmute your laptop and
I'll leave it out loud in here and after my microphone and I'll put it in the chat.
Yes, and you could, your laptop. I could use mine.
Okay. Hold on a second.
The call is being recorded.
Is this better, guys? Does this sound better? You have to turn your sound off too, Cindy.
Now I think I'm deaf.
Okay, can you guys hear me better now?
It is better.
Much better.
So I'll start over again. We have used, our Valley View School has been switched to fully virtual for February 8 and 9. It may be longer depending on our situation. I do have a conference call with some school staff and the Department of Health tomorrow, and we will get more information about the status of Valley View going forward. Also a reminder, this week we have Thursday is a AM day only. There is no PM virtual. That's due to staff professional development, and the schools are closed Friday and Monday for the holiday. So far, we've used 2 snow days, and we have 3 remaining. We're not allowed to use. We can't use delays this year due to the 4-hour day. It just doesn't work out. So we have to use the virtual days in lieu of delays. I would say most likely we'll be on a delay tomorrow. I'm sorry, on a virtual day tomorrow due to the impending storm that's supposed to hit right when the buses are rolling. So that the message will get out later if that's the case. And I think this year especially, we really want to keep spring break intact, and we want to keep the end of the school year the way it is. We don't want to have to take days from spring break. Allow people to have a little bit of time off, especially with the COVID situation right now. So today, another couple things here. Some committee recommendations we're going to need today. We're going to need from finance, we're going to need a recommendation on Dr. Grip. We're going to need a recommendation also from finance on our budget, which is 1.44% tax levy increase. And from from finance and operations, we're going to need a recommendation on whether or not we only replace the HVAC at Riverview in the all-purpose room and gym, or add air conditioning. Those things will have to be discussed during the committee discussion period. And from personnel, we need a recommendation on whether to proceed with the CJ Pride membership for the 2021 school year. And that's the end of my report.
Good to say it one more time, Dean.
Dr. Cullis, whenever you're ready.
I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
Hold on.
Kindergarten pre-registration is open, so all those that have kindergartners for 21-22 school year, please make sure to go on our website. It's just denville.org, and all the information is listed and the link is there, and you can register. We have many things going on in the district for Black History Month. One is a poster contest that's going to run until February 26th. The paper is in the school. It's a little bit thicker paper, although students can use their own paper if they would like. And you can look on the Friday folder and in the schools about the guidelines to the contest. So we're looking forward to grades 3 through 8 participating in our Black History Month poster contest. Our NJSLA testing and our COGAT testing is still moving forward. COGATs are going to be moved to March 8th through 12th, and a letter will be going out to parents. So that's only for 2nd graders and 5th graders. It will be digital, however, it will be done in school. So that is being moved just for a few other things that had to be pushed back. So COGATs will take place March 8th through 12th in class. The NJSLA testing dates are listed on our testing calendar. And as of now, the state is moving forward. We're moving forward with that. I will be sending out an updated letter March 1st because our building principals are working on the schedule to see if we can reduce the amount of days that we're going to be using for testing. In the event that we do have to go virtual, that we will be able to have enough makeup time in the end of May. So you'll be hearing more on that. And this concludes the Assistant Superintendent's report.
Great, thank you, Dr. Collins. Damaris, anything from the Business Administrator's Office this week?
Yes, the budget 21-22 school year binder are available. I left a copy at the chamber room tonight, and also I have some over in my office as well too. We want to thank really the Finance Committee for their work and time spent during the last month or so discussing and the budget and giving us their recommendations and input. We have spent a lot of time, a lot of discussions, healthy discussions, and hopefully everything will pass on the 8th for the preliminary budget on March 8th, and then the final budget with a public hearing in April 26th. That concludes my report.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you for the books. They are here. We have them. Thank you. And again, thank you to everyone for the work involved this year. I know this was an extraordinary year, and ask you to take extraordinary steps. So thank you for all of your hard work. At this time, I'm going to open up for public discussion. These will be for agenda items. We're going to open up at 7:48 p.m. If there's any public online, if you care to make a comment or have a question, you can enter in the chat and we'll recognize you.
Nobody says.
Okay. Okay, seeing no one online, I'm going to close the public portion at 7:49 p.m. and we'll move to old business. No action to be taken. Mr. Kim, would you care to move us through these items today?
Sure. Did you say Mr. Kim?
Yes, Mr. Kim.
Okay. Yeah, so old business, no action to be taken during the next board meeting. We will be going through some reports for approval. The first one will be the reports, the Treasurer of School Monies and the Board Secretary reports for January 2021, as well as the education reports of Student Enrollment and Health Office for January 2021, and the minutes for the organization meeting on January 4th, along with the work session meeting and executive session for January 4th, and the regular session of January 25th.
Great, thank you, Mr. Kim. Does anyone have any comments or questions on these items? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to new business. Mr. Anderson, would you move us through the personnel items, please?
Absolutely. If there are no objections, I'd like to move under personnel items 4A, 1, 2, and 3. Please take note of the addendum that includes under under 1, items C, D, and E. They include some personnel movement, leave replacements, a new hire, resignation, and some retroactive approval for a resignation.
I'll second. Thank you, Mr. Pax. Any questions or comments on these items? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to roll call. Damaris, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mr. Cass?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Luer?
Yes.
Mr. Kim?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, before we move on to personnel, Mr. Anderson, if you wouldn't mind, I know Dr. Forte asked for us to give a recommendation on the program for the outreach. We discussed that in the personnel. Would you care to give more of an update on that? I know it's in the minutes of the meeting.
Sure, yeah. So we had a discussion on CJ Pride quite a bit at the personnel meeting late last week. So just as a reminder, one of the initiatives we have in the district is to diversify our staff. Dr. Forte and Dr. Cullis put together some really nice demographic information as far as our staff and student population, applicant pools that we see, and some of the attempts that we have in the past tried to diversify our staff. And as a reminder, that diversification comes in a lot of different manners, both male, female, different nationalities, just a plethora of backgrounds that we try to obviously diversify our staff. And one of the ways that the administration has brought to us recently is a organization called CJ Pride. The benefit is that they have access, or they kind of run these job fair type of programs, as well as, and probably just as important as Dr. Forte talked to us about, was a collaboration with other districts to talk about ways that they have been successful. So I believe it's like a monthly type meeting that they get together to discuss success they've had or things that are working or challenges they have, which seems to be a great way to kind of network a little bit and understand some successes other districts are having. So the cost of this is $2,000 for the first year, and then subsequently $100 each year after. And the discussion was really about whether, I don't think it was a direct or question of whether we would move forward with something like this, but whether we should do it now or wait a year based upon COVID and how much success we might have with the program or the benefit we would have for the program in the first year. Based upon, you know, kind of the lack of in-person job fairs and things like that. So I think where the committee kind of sat on it was really because of the way that the program is set up and it being that $2,000 cost now and then $100 subsequently. Really the cost of waiting a year is the $100 on the next subsequent year, because we're going to pay that $2,000, and over the life of this program, the extra cost of doing it this year as opposed to next year is $100 as opposed to the $2,000, although we have to pay that up front. So, you know, Dr. Forte felt that the program, the benefit of these monthly meetings and this collaboration with this group of districts that are in a similar position to Denville in trying to diversify their staff, was beneficial, and that would be beneficial in the first year in spite of having the challenges with COVID. So the personnel committee recommended moving forward with it this year to get that benefit started and get the program started, so we could really have a good plan in place. Start working on it right now in ways that we can work through with COVID, and then have a really strong plan in place to continue to build upon that for next year and subsequent, as we can have more access to in-person job fairs and whatnot. So I didn't know if, Dino, you had anything to add, because obviously you were in the personnel committee.
No, I think that was perfect. I mean, I think, you know, we were all a little ambivalent going into it in the committee. I think we came out of it positive, as Mike said, and I think a lot of that has to do with Sandy and Steve expressed that there'll be activity. There'll basically be work that can be done now and kind of lay the groundwork for when things return to a more normal stance. And, you know, we again, the committee decided that it made sense for us to recommend it. So, you know, with that in mind, I don't know if any of the other board members that are not part of that committee have any questions or comments about it at this point, but that's where the committee ended up.
Yeah.
Did we discuss the hiring practices? People that
Dino, we couldn't hear whatever Don is saying there.
Okay. Hang on one second. Don. Yeah, maybe.
You hearing that?
Yes.
Okay. In the past, we've had some discussion on diversity and
the communication.
Can't hear, guys.
I got a little bit.
All right.
Hold on.
Let me turn my sound off. No.
Can you hear me now?
Let's try it. Talk a little more.
Can you hear me?
It's better.
Yeah, Don.
Okay. We had past discussions on diversity and the hiring practices, and a key factor was the responses to the ads. A lot of diversified applicants didn't apply, and one we discussed, I think that was a big one, is that we have a high concentration of female teachers, and when you have an opening, that's who comes in for the interviews, very few men. So I guess this resource that we're going to be using is going to address some of those things. With our hiring practice, I mean, you know, we're drilling down to all the minutiae, but when you have a job opening, people are going to apply for it, they're going to send in resumes, and you're going to look at those resumes, call out the ones that you want to speak to. But if people from these different sectors in our society don't apply, it's very hard to be diverse. So is that resource going to address how you reach out to some more people, or get the you know, get things weighted a little bit more evenly with the candidate pool?
So, can everybody hear now? I think you should be able to hear me now, right? Use this.
They can hear you now.
So, the intention of the group is to do just that, Don. During COVID, there's a little bit more difficulty because the job fairs are virtual, but the I think the best part of it is really the networking and the connections with all these other groups that are basically in the same boat as us, trying to do the same thing. I'm not expecting this to, you know, diversify our staff in a year or 2 years or 5 years, maybe even 10 years. But I do think it'll help us have a game plan of how to move forward. And is there a way we could do something? You know, I can't even answer that. I mean, like, for some reason, I don't know why, but there was a study, and I included it in my document with you. Caucasian females are the majority of the people going into education in college. So I think that this will help us at least hear from other districts in the same kind of boat and see what kinds of things they're doing. And then also the job fair, I think, is important too. I don't think it's like a solution in itself, but I do think it's something that's, I think it's worthwhile doing, and I recommended it. And I think the personnel committee was pretty supportive of it as well.
Does the membership term start in the as a calendar type of program, or does it start like a school year where the membership starts in like June, July, or September?
So this is something that we were looking at for a while. So now that it's already February, I'm not sure of that question. So once we're sure we're going to do it, we'll reach out and find out if it's too late even to join this year. But I just wanted to make sure that the board was supportive of it before I really moved to the next level.
And from my perspective, this is James. I'm a proponent. I'm for spending the money now and signing up. So.
Are you staying on or off?
Okay, so we're going to move on at this point to the Finance Committee. Mr. Kim, you care to move us through those items?
Sure. So I'll start with the minutes here. I motion that we approve the following resolutions. Number one is to approve the stipulation of the settlement for the student as outlined in my minutes under the Finance Committee minutes, as well as the documents that are found in this drive for today's meeting, as well as to approve the uncommon thread addendum for services that will not exceed $18,900.
Oh, the sound is off. Yeah, go ahead.
You have to turn it off.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Luer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions on the finance items?
No, those are just, it's a settlement and an additional, some additional therapies needed.
If there are no questions or comments, roll call, please.
Mr. Capello?
Yes.
Mr. Cast?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Luer?
Yes.
Mr. Kim.
Yes. So I'll take this time now to discuss some of the points, the key points that were made during the Finance Committee, as well as try to gauge everyone's position with regard to these topics that Dr. Forte mentioned during his comments. The first thing I'll start off with is the Riverview upgrade from just a heating unit, which needs replacing, to either a heating unit only or a heating unit with AC, with air conditioning. And the price difference is $250,000. So if we were to move forward with only heating, then that would cost the district $400,000, but of which we would use funds from reserves. If we decided to add the air conditioning portion to it, then it would cost the district $650,000. The committee feels that we should spend the extra money and go with the $650,000, but I believe the administration is looking for the general consensus of the board so that EI Associates can go out to bid for this work, so that we're lined up and upgrade this stuff for the next fiscal year.
Let me just jump in for 1 second. It's not that they're going to go out to bid yet. They just need to have a direction from us as to which way to develop the plans. The plans would be different if it's AC. With AC, there's a different engineering. It's a totally different plan. We don't want to spend the cost for them to develop two different sets of plans. So right now we're at the point where we have to let them know whether or not we want the air conditioning in there or if we just want the heat. And also, I just want to make sure it's clear. It's for the gym and the all-purpose room at Riverview. And this was just to refresh everybody's memory, this was the last HVAC unit that we were not able to do with the ESIP money, which we did somewhere back in like 2017. And this was like on the list of all the HVAC units. This was the next one in line, but we couldn't fit it into that. So it's been on our list of stuff to do. And we have been having very many difficulties with this heating unit. And we do recommend that we add the air conditioning just like we did at the Valley View gym.
Thanks for clarifying, Steve. I apologize for messing that up. You did mention that during the meeting. I just got I got my signals mixed up. So
no problem. All good.
Any comments or questions from the rest of the board with how they stand on heating only versus heating and AC?
I just want to
Do we have any statistics? Sorry, go ahead, Damaris.
I'm so sorry. I just also want to point out that these are budgeted numbers. And usually the architect budget a little higher just to give us some cushion with budgeting purposes. It's not final, just budgeted numbers. And it's all coming from capital reserves as well. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
No problem. Do we have any idea, or can you guys give me some numbers on how often we have used the Valley View air conditioning?
So they actually do use it a lot in the beginning of the year and the end of the year. Am I coming out? You guys hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yes, they do use it a lot. I mean, they pretty much use it in May, September, part of October, obviously June, and then when they have big events in there, like when they have like back to school night. If you've ever been to a back to school night at Valley View without the air, you've seen like it's just very, very hot in there. Same thing at Riverview. They could use it for back to school night and other events, as well as just on real hot days, they could get kids in there to get a little bit of a break out of the heat.
Yeah, I mean, from my take, guys, and I wasn't really big on the Valley View air conditioning to begin with. I think it's one or two rooms we're talking about in a school. It's like literally 5% probably of the square footage in the building, and they're not in there on a regular basis. It's a huge number, in my opinion, in a year when we're trying to save money. I know that, once you make the decision, you can't go back and change it. I have a hard time seeing the value. I get it. Back to school night's uncomfortable. That makes it faster. People get in and out and get their speeches done. And, yes, it could be uncomfortable. But I just, to me, educational benefit versus back to school night and big events. I mean, it's hard to say, the educational benefit. We could do a whole lot with 250. That's like, 2 staff members, if maybe even 3 staff members we could hire for that price. And, I know it's 1 year on a staff member that's reoccurring, but there's a lot we could do with $250,000. I have a hard time seeing the huge amount of benefit we're getting for that huge number, in my opinion. I am 100% supportive on fixing the unit, obviously, or replacing the unit we currently have to get it back up and running and appropriately. But I'm just not a big fan of air conditioning for this type of cost in 1 or 2, rooms.
There was, for some reason, I know why, at Valley View, the additional cost was $80,000, which, made a lot of sense. This one's $250,000. It's substantially more, but it's due to the fact that it needs a lot of new venting and things like that. It's just not, some of the stuff is not done the way you would need to do it for air conditioning. So there is a little additional cost for that. And just remember, this is all coming out of reserve money. So it wouldn't be able to, just for the public, this wouldn't be able to be used for anything like a staff member or any other things. It would have to be used only for a capital replacement or repair.
Yeah, but we don't forget too, Steve, we could the LSRP has enough projects for probably $10 million worth of, our long range facility plan. Has probably $10 million plus worth of stuff on it. So it's just my opinion. It's just my 2 cents on it. I just don't see a huge benefit in it versus, and thanks, Steve, for bringing up the cost on Valley View. I didn't remember what it was. This one did seem astronomically high, so that makes sense. And thanks for pointing that out.
When I subbed at the different schools back in the day, the gyms were used periodically, not every day, but for reasons of lunchtime when the weather was bad outside. So you get these sultry days sometimes in the late spring. It could be April, May, not all the time, but it's raining outside. The kids, after lunch, instead of going outside and blowing off some steam and energy, they go into the gyms, and they can get pretty crowded. I mean, it's really, everybody can't shoot baskets at the same time. So it would be a not essential, but a nice to have for the staff and the children at Riverview. And we've done the upgrades to the other schools, and I periodically get those questions too. How come they're doing this at Lakeview? It could be an academic type of thing if we're not doing it at Riverview. So this would put Riverview on the same plateau with the HVAC as the other schools. I agree with Mike. Money's tight, but the committee, when we discussed it, it was a one and done deal rather than piecemealing it. It would cost more in the long run. But I think there will be some benefit to the school, the children, and the staff by having the air conditioning in there.
Thanks, Don. I know Laura and Katie are not here tonight, but Dave, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts if you want to share.
I feel much the same as Don and James. The committee as a whole agreed that the benefits were worth the cost. I understand where Mr. Anderson is coming from, in that it is a large amount of money compared to what we have done previously, but I think the benefit outweighs, and that doesn't outweigh the cost. I think the benefit is worth the cost because, okay, yes, the kids don't spend all their time in there, but every kid at Riverview eats their lunch in the all-purpose room, and they do, well, during a normal year, I should say, eats their lunch in the all-purpose room, and they do all their gym classes in the gym, and having a place to basically get away from the heat in the spring, late spring, and early fall I think there's definitely an educational benefit to that.
Thank you. Steve, just refresh my memory. Lakeview does have air conditioning?
So Lakeview does not.
Okay.
The reason why we would do it the way we're doing is because Valley View needed new heat and it needed new ventilation in the gym. Now we know Riverview needs new ventilation in their all-purpose room and gym, but at this particular time, Lakeview's is not in need of replacement. When Lakeview's is time for replacement in the next 5 years or so, that would probably be the solution that would be suggested, was to add the air conditioning to one of their large rooms so that all 3 schools would have at least one large room. Valley View has their cafeteria, and so their cafeteria, library, and gym are air conditioned. Riverview has their library air conditioned, and Lakeview has their library air conditioned, and the other rooms are not.
Okay, thank you. I mean, in my mind, that kind of begs the question of what would that cost look like, right? Because I mean, if we go ahead with this one, I think then we are implicitly saying we're going to do Lakeview when that time comes. So I think, we have to recognize that. If we maybe talk about $250,000 now plus whatever the addition for, because I don't see us having a leg to stand on to say we're not going to do Lakeview
Right.
when that time comes if we've done Riverview. So I honestly am kind of going to reserve my comments at this point. I do not know how I feel about this. I have mixed sentiments about it. I have been in those rooms when they've been ridiculously hot. I've been at events. I know it would be nice to have. I'm not sure if this is easier to do it. I am honestly on the fence about it. So I hate to say this, but I'm going to have to leave it there.
The important thing to know is that you really wouldn't want to do it after this. It's either we have to do the heat because the heat's been out. So we have to do it. Yeah. So this is the time to do it if we're going to do it at all. You wouldn't want to do it after. It would probably double the cost of it.
No, I understand it. So it's kind of
right.
You're kind of cutting it off.
Exactly.
I get that, and I'm like Mike said, I'm completely for doing the repair. That's not the issue in my mind.
So you know what? We'll just have to let EI know, because right now I only have 3 people solid yes. I'm gonna put a resolution on the agenda on the 22nd to decide whether or not it's going to be heat or air conditioning, and then because I can't tell them with maybes, because they're going to start developing the plans, and the plans are expensive. It's not like it's thousands of dollars, so we don't want to have them draw up a set of plans and then change the plans. So we will put a resolution on the 22nd to let them know.
No, I think that's fair. Let's let it. We'll let it settle out.
Correct.
That's good. And in the meantime, any board members that have questions or want to discuss this with Steve or the administration further, obviously should to get comfortable before that meeting.
Oh, Steve, do you happen to know what the anticipated lifespan of? Sorry. What do you happen to have any idea what the anticipated lifespan of this of the new HVAC system would be?
They tell you about 15 years, but we don't usually replace them in 15 years. Usually it lasts longer than that.
Okay, so we're looking minimum of 15, possibly as many as 20 or 25, depending on how well they can live at home.
Right.
Okay, so basically, to put it in perspective, what we're looking at is either we do air conditioning for the gym and the all-purpose room at Riverview this year, or it happens after probably everybody who's involved with this is long since stopped caring about what's going on.
Just to let you know, the one that's there now was there in about 1995. So, even though they say you should replace it in 15 years, normally in a school district, you try to repair it for a little while. Now we're at the point where we need to replace it.
Thank you. Anyone else, any comments or questions on this particular issue? If not, Mr. Kim, I know we have a couple of other issues that touch on finance that Dr. Forte asked about. Did you want to talk about the Dr. Griffin?
Yes. So the second item that Dr. Forte requested that we give him guidance on was Dr. Grip's demographic study. Of course, it was two finance meetings ago, or maybe 3 or 4 now at this point. But I did mention that the the dollar amount, which I believe is about $26,000 or $27,000 for the demographic study, which will be funded by capital reserves. And it would be something that we would want to put in and approve for the budget for next year. So Dr. Grip is looking for guidance so that he can sort of set up his schedule. And we just want to know how the board felt with committing somewhere between 27 to 30,000 for his services in a new demographic study. Just to remind everyone, I believe the Finance Committee was for moving forward with this demographic study. And the concern, of course, was that next year, if we waited another year, he would be increasing his proposal by anywhere from $500 to $1,000. I think there was a difference of about $1,000 that from the previous proposal, which was 1 or 2 years ago.
Steve, we are required to have a demographic study every so often, correct? Does the state require us to do one periodically?
They do for your long range facilities plan. But I don't, Damaris, do you know the amount of time it lasts? Because I'm not sure if that's if we have to do it right now for the state.
I'm sorry, I lost Dino's question.
The question is how, like, we have a demographic study already. Is it time to do it according to the state? Do we need to update it right now?
No, we do not need to do it right away. Definitely, the state does not really mandate that we have to have one a demographic study in any certain amount of years. It's up to the district discretion.
Typically, it's part of the long-range facilities plan.
And it's usually every 5 years. That's what the long-range facility plans recommends, that we do it every 5 years. But it is a recommendation. It's not a requirement.
I also want to just make sure everybody knows that we are planning on doing a new long-range facilities plan this summer with our architects, because our last one was done prior to me coming here, somewhere around 2014. So we are planning on doing a new long-range facilities plan right now. But we could use the demographic study we have now. It's not like we can't. It's not like there's some kind of rule that says you can't.
So I guess I have a conceptual question, and I'm not sure anybody can answer it. But if we do the demographic study, you always have to take them with a certain grain of salt in terms of, what are they telling us, or what is the likelihood? We've seen this before in other ones. I guess my question is, if unless the demographic study came out with some very high numbers, or very low numbers, or some very big trends that we could really count on, I guess what would we do differently in the next few years with the study as opposed to that?
I think Mr. Kem, we've never really talked about this publicly. Maybe you should tell a little bit about the difference between this demographic study that Dr. Grip offers compared to the ones that we're used to.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm going to pull up my notes here, so if you could just bear with me. But there's a few things I want to remind everyone with regards to why we approached Dr. Grip to begin with. The first reason, of course, is that the demographic study that was presented to us, to the board previously, was filled with a lot of questions, a lot of holes, a lot of gaps, which really contributed to our what's the word I'm looking for? Didn't feel confident with the results of his study, right? Because he was just using some basic methods that didn't really follow it up with a lot of other supporting data that resulted in a lot of questions as to the validity of his demographic study, which of course, when we first did the study with him, there was, a couple of years had passed. And so we had asked him for a revised one, but at the same time, we've also questioned why his first demographic study was off the mark. And I'm going to use that as a way to put it. Now, Dr. Grip's study is much more comprehensive. And I'm pulling up I still haven't put up his proposal, but he is going to incorporate many different facets to his study beyond just the birth rates, the town birth rates that was used in the previous demographic study. He intends to incorporate housing turnover. And Damaris, you know what meeting we had that with Dr. Grip? Was that the December meeting? I believe
it was early January. It was the first meeting in January. It was like January 8th, something like that. It was a Thursday night.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I have the proposal up here in front of me now. So one of the aspects besides live birth data, which is something that he will use, he will incorporate historical enrollment trends. He will also incorporate self-contained special education statistics, as well as housing growth. Dino, I believe one of the comments that you made off the record or between meetings was the number of strollers that you saw within your little niche, your area of Denville, the amount of new strollers that you see mothers or parents walking around town. He also incorporates home sales. So any new home sale data or the home sale data is within the past, X amount of years will also be incorporated into the study. So, which is part of his detailed housing analysis. He will also incorporate mapping data. So for example, all the students that are enrolled currently, where they're located geographically within the town. And then finally, as I was mentioning before, a housing turnover analysis, which allows him to sort of analyze the turnover of homes. So if a home hasn't been sold in the past 10 to 15 years, then the likelihood of it being sold in the next 10 to 15 years is very minimal. And he uses a lot of statistics, a lot of data that, and a lot of research that he helped develop with Rutgers. And that's the other impressive component to his background as well as the study, is that he's not just using some old statistics, he's using cutting edge sort of methods that he has himself developed with Rutgers to help project and to help try to be as accurate as possible. So one of the questions, of course, that we asked is, well, do you do follow-up studies to sort of prove that you're off? And I believe he said that the industry standard was, it's typical to be off by maybe anywhere from 1% to 5%. And after seeing the previous demographic study, I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was definitely off by more than 5%. So this is a second reason why I believe that Dr. Grip's study and his sort of approach is definitely worth every penny. And the final reason why I believe it's so important is because we did take on Riverview Annex, and it is only a 5-year sort of Band-Aid with another 5 years to renew. So after that, what do we plan on doing? And I think it's very important that we have sort of a baseline of where we are now, along with what the next 5 years looks like, so that we can decide, do we need to start planning for any larger capital projects for the district? Because if kindergarten enrollments and in the next couple of weeks with Dr. Cullis giving us enrollment data, we should really know, holy cow, this is a trend, but we can't just use that data to make decisions, capital decisions. We're going to need a demographic study to justify if the trends that we're seeing are going to be substantiated and continue. So from my perspective, it's almost like a no-brainer. It's a necessary thing to have because it's a potential stepping stone into a larger capital project that we may need to undertake, especially with COAG, the developments in COA. Thank you. The developments in town that's sort of looming over us. I know that some of the properties haven't broken ground yet, but he has indicated that he can include those developments as part of his study. So for example, he said that if ground were to break tomorrow, this is what I would project, or he would project.
Hey, Dino, can I just bring something up real quick?
Everyone's muted on your side, Steve.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm trying
to. Thanks, Dino. And James, thanks for all the research you've done on this. I obviously, I think you guys probably remember I was pretty upset with our last demography study just based upon the accuracy, as you talked about. I posed some questions to James, who got some answers from Dr. Grip, and appreciate the follow-up there. I certainly think his study is way more in depth. I'm still not sure of the timing on this. In other words, if this study came back and said, "Oh my gosh, you're going to see a boom in enrollment," are we ready to say, "Cool, let's go out to referendum for $10 or $30 million"? It's a big step to take. I think we'd have to probably see a demographic study and several years of trends, groundbreaking in some of these developments that are out there. We've got some numbers based upon at least the Rutgers study for the developments that are proposed and semi-approved or in the approval process from a COA perspective. I do like what Dr. Grip does. I guess in my head, I'm trying to determine when's the right time to do it. And if we don't do it now, do we need to get a refresh on this, and how quickly, and what does that cost? If we decide 2 years if we do it now and then 2 years later say, hey, let's get a refresh, is that a reduced cost, or what's that look like? I think he's got a lot of data in there. I mean, I think the proof's in the pudding until you do this. It's funny to, spend a little bit of time on the board, because I can remember we had a demographer who used this live births as their way to do it, and the board got rid of that person and brought in somebody who did it a different way, and now we're getting rid of it and going back to the other way. So I guess it comes full circle with a lot of this stuff. I always thought the live births were probably a more accurate way than just relying on what the past history has been. I don't know how it's kind of like the stock market. Past history doesn't predict future investment. So I like his method better. I don't know. I think the stuff we've talked about, the housing turnover and all that, I think that's kind of the mystery that he stirs up, because he puts all this stuff together and then it spits out a number. I don't know if we'll ever get an answer to what's the special sauce, how is he making that? What's the recipe there? Because there's a lot of unknowns on how he does that. And, he seems to point out some of the success he's had. I certainly think he uses a lot more data. I mean, it's interesting to see the census, the changes of the age groups. That was really interesting to me when I looked at the Princeton study. He looked at 10 years previous, the layout of male and female and the ages, and then I think current, which is really interesting to look at, and maybe interesting in Denville to determine, we've kind of predicted, or at least anecdotally feel like we've seen a turnover in housing and having younger people that are more childbearing ages come into Denville. So it's interesting. I like it. My question is the timing. Is now the right time? Is it, because we don't have these developments built. There's now another one since the last time we had this stuff run to look at. That's concerning. But nobody's stuck a shovel in the ground yet. So I'm supportive of doing the study. I'm just in my head questioning, is now the right time, or do we wait? I just don't know.
I wanted to make sure you guys know, on January 15th, I reached out to the Denville Building Department to find out if any permits were pulled on any of these new developments that we've been talking about for a while. As of January 15th, none of the permits were pulled for those. So I do see the value in, like you said, Mike, I see the value in the study, and I do see the value in holding off to see what's going to happen with these developments. And we've been talking about them for years, and there haven't been any shovels in the ground. So, you know, I think that this study is really good. I think that the module that James just explained and that you talked about a little bit, Mike, is very valuable. And I think he has the experience. You know, he works with New York City public schools and, you know, all kinds of districts around here, including our regional district. So I do think that it's something that we should do. And I think I do. I can understand everybody's ideas about when's the right time. Is it time to do it once we really see some of these developments going up, or is it time to do it before?
One of the things that came up at the meeting when we spoke to the doctor was including these future developments. And we did indicate at the meeting they could be 5 or 10 years away. And many of us may not be sitting here, you know, dealing with it when the actual shovels come on the ground and they finish them. And he also talked about, I guess, using the Rutgers method for calculating the number of students that come in the apartments and condos. So if I recall, he was going to do something about that, even though we're not going to have these apartments anytime soon. That you get some data from that. But you know, again, it could, by the time this thing just go through all the legalities. I know there's a suit pending on one of them because the builder, I think it's reneged on what they initially agreed to on the number of apartments and wants more. So I think that these new developments are really the critical part of the study. I know we're using St. Mary's now for the Riverview Annex. There's plenty of room in there still. So, I mean, you know, I could argue this either way, you know, wait a little bit longer or do it now. I think you do it now because at some point, what's the lease length on St. Mary's?
It's
7 years?
Our lease is 5 years with a 5-year option and then 5 1-year options.
Yeah, so and this is also costing us a lot of money. And we did a lot of phenomenal job, you know, with the renovations and the upgrades over there. It is costing us a lot of money. So is that going to be adequate for the future or not? I don't know until you have a demographic study. And then where do you go? Do you need an addition on Riverview, or, you know, God forbid, you have to build another school? That's a real ton of money to do that. And then if you see, as we've talked in the past about, it's a cycle here with the population or with the student population in town. People age out, the kids leave town, and some of them actually leave their houses. They may be alive when they leave, or retire to the Carolinas, or they just may die in their house. And you get young couples move in. So I think the student population is just going to go up and down for a long, long time. But do you really need another school, or will an addition be fine? Or do you rent St. Mary's building forever?
You're asking all the questions. I know those are all the big questions we're trying to find out.
I don't have all the answers. I think the demographic study would give us a blueprint, a direction of where to go, especially with the future, you know, housing.
What it comes down to is it's going to take once they start pulling permits, once they stick the shovel in the ground, it's going to take 2 to 3 years to get any one of these projects done. They could run concurrently, they could run at the end, we don't know. But it's going to take us a minimum of 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, to do any kind of major structural changes, whether it's an addition, a new school, whatever. And we need to have the demographic study. Basically, we need to have it before anybody sticks a shovel in the ground. And we're going to have to make some guesses. We're going to have to make some educated guesses. And our best guess will be helped by the demographic study. Now, the question is timing, as several people have already said. And I strongly suspect that we are going to see building sooner rather than later, and in which case we need the demographic study sooner rather than later. But you know, everybody else has to make their own decision. But the way I see it is we need it this year, possibly next year, but I think sooner would be better.
So, you know, while everybody's talking, I think, what might ease everybody's mind is that we contract with EI and we contract with Dr. Grip, EI, to do the demographic study. We tell EI we'd like to do it, next spring, and we ask Dr. Grip to do his project, say, late fall, and then EI can take Dr. Grip's study and do our long-range facilities plan probably more than a year from right now, but it would be in next year's budget. I think when, because you guys are used to me, like when I put something on the agenda, it's going to start the next day. I know that you got to, just for this one thing, I'm saying maybe it would be more like, 14 months from now, something like that.
Steve, are you referring to the long-range facility plan or the demographic study 14 months from now?
They're actually married. You want the long-range facilities plan to come after the demographic study. So right. What I would recommend is that we ask Dr. Grip to do his project, say in the winter, and then we have EI do their LRFP, the long-range facilities plan, in the spring. So right. More than a year from right now. And that might help us.
So,
yeah.
You hit on something I was going to ask. I was going to ask the three of you, basically, you, Damaris, and Sandy, to kind of give us your opinions about now versus waiting. And I think you just expressed you're okay with waiting, or you're okay with scheduling it that far out.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable with that. I look, we already know what our projects are this summer, so it's not like we need the long-range facilities plan to find out what we're doing this summer. We'll have the long-range facilities plan to budget for what we're going to do in 22, 23, because we'll have it by, say we'll get it next April, something like that. And they'll give us a preliminary one, and they'll tell us, like, oh yeah, these three things you better get going right away.
Anyone have any thoughts on that? I mean, my initial reaction is I'm more comfortable with that scenario, I think, than kind of pulling the trigger on it right away.
It seems to me that if correct me if I'm wrong, but we're still looking at putting what you just described, Steve, we're still looking at putting that in this upcoming year's budget, correct?
Correct, but with reserves, though, not with, right.
Yeah, so that would be whenever they actually do the work, we're still paying for it with next year's budget. So in my mind, it would be probably, if we're not going to have it done right away, we would want to wait longer, because we are going to have more information about if any permits have been pulled or anything like that.
Yeah, it would probably be 8, 9 months from now until he starts, Dr. Grip, and then EI would start maybe 13 months from now, 13, 14 months from now, something like that.
Which is the benefit of time, how long it takes to maybe control it.
Correct.
We see another year's of involvement. We will see if that's really a trend, or it's falling off, or whatever. So yeah, I mean, again, to me, that makes some sense. I feel more comfortable with that strategy.
So why don't we put the demographic study and the long-range facilities plan study, even though it's going to be in the budget, on the next agenda as well, and everybody votes on it, and then because we have to tell these people, it's not like we can't really string them along. We have to tell them that yes, we want to be in there, and then once they know that the board approved it, they're ready to go. That's fine. They'll be fine with putting it on hold. It's just that we can't tell them that we don't know.
Steve, we already approved the long-range facility plans with EI. That's already being approved. The demographic will be for the 21-22 school year, included in the budget, and it will pass on April 26th. And as Steve suggested, the demographic study will be included in the budget coming out of capital reserve. If a year from now the board decides not to do it, those funds have to go back to capital reserve. We cannot utilize those funds in any other way, because that's what the statute reads. If we take money out of capital reserve for a specific project, we do not do it, has to go back to capital reserve. So we do have approximately 1 year from the budget approval to do the demographic study if we need to do it.
But we do want to do the demographic study prior to the long-range facilities plan, so that he can update the long-range facilities plan with the most recent demographic study.
Correct.
Dino, I liked your suggestion. Can we also get Dr. Cullis's thoughts as well?
Sure. Sandy, can you hear that?
Yeah, I just have to unmute. Well, right now I've just kind of been keeping my own notes as to where we're going for the kindergarten. I mean, we have in the first couple of days, we have 96 registered already in 4 days. Last year we had 190 in August, and then we dropped to 158 because of, COVID concerns. By the end of September, pulled it out, pulled their kindergartners out, decided to keep them home a year or move them to a full day pre-K, something else. So I don't know right now if they're going to be coming to kindergarten next year or they moved or what the case is. We're trying to track down where did those students go. So, I'm going to default to Steve on this because this is about the long range planning. And I can do, with what I'm doing, I have the information I need to give you, accurate kindergarten data.
So Dr. Cullis, you just said that a lot of kids decided not to attend school, or the parents decided not to send them to school. Does that possibly mean that a first grade class for next year could be inflated if they decide that they're satisfied with what Denville's doing and they're going to let them come back into first grade, or they're going to come into kindergarten?
That is what we're working on right now, contacting each family to figure out, are you coming back in first? Are you coming back in kindergarten? Are you not coming back at all? Because that was a large number. And I know that Mr. Cass was talking about this because we did have a huge class. We had like 190 and we prepared for that. And then by the end of September, we went down to 158, which is where it sits now. So we are going to each of those families trying to figure out what the plan is. So I don't have an answer yet, but exactly those same questions I've had. I need to know if we're going to be moving a first grade teacher to kindergarten, to have a huge kindergarten class. Are we going to have a bubble, or are they going to come back to first grade? That's the question.
Yeah, definitely keep us posted on that. And yeah, I like Dr. Forte's plan or suggestion is, if the rest of the board agrees, then we try to schedule Dr. Grip's study for the fall or winter, and then we can subsequently do the long range facility plan after that. But yeah, it sounds like a good suggestion from my part.
Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
Do you want it on the agenda next week, or are you guys good with that plan? Is everybody good with that plan we just talked about, or do you want to actually do? I see Mike nodding. I see everybody.
I'm good with the plan, but it's probably best to have it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing. Put it on the agenda. The public can see it. Everybody knows what's going on.
Okay. And finally, Dr. Forte had requested that we discuss the 1.44 tax levy. If Dr. Forte, if that's okay, I'd like to, maybe bring that discussion to the next meeting. I'd like to discuss individually with all the board members, now that we have our binders, how they felt about the 1.44. So is that all right with you, Dr. Forte?
I'm going to defer to Damaris because she's the one that has to update the binders all the time. So what do you think, Damaris? I mean, I'm fine with it if you are, obviously.
I am comfortable with the 1.44 tax levy, Mr. Kim.
Okay.
This point, it is Steve and I's recommendation to go with that. We already had made several changes, and which will impact future budgets. And personally, I would stick with 1.44.
Okay. Yeah. If that's okay, I'd like to talk to the board members individually, just now that we have the binders, to see what kind of further questions that they might have. If that's okay. Yeah.
Board members that Damaris, when she sent out the notice about the budget books, she has made her time available for anyone to make an appointment to go over the budget books this week. So obviously, I encourage everyone to do that if they need to or want to. And then with that, I guess we can move on. So there are no objections. Let's move on to new business. These are going to be no.
Hey, Dino, it's really hard to hear you.
Whoa.
How's this better? Mike, can you hear
I don't
me?
know. Talk a little more.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
That's a little bit better.
All right. Here, I'm gonna. How's this? Does this work?
It's a little
That's
better.
better.
All right. I'm gonna go like this for right now. So I was just saying, all the members should certainly take advantage of Damaris's offer to sit down and go over the budget binder this week if they have the time. Otherwise, we're going to move on to no new business, no action to be taken. Personnel, Mr. Anderson, would you care to take us through those items?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Myself or someone at the next meeting will go through personnel items. Right now on the agenda so far, there are just 2 items, one under the typical new hires, resignations, retirements, etc. And then the other one is the board to approve the revised job description for school physician. Steve, can you just remind me on what was revised on this description? I know we talked about it briefly. I can't remember the details of it from the meeting.
Yeah, just a minor revisions from our attorney to make it less of an employee, more of a consultant, because it was written to be that the person was like an actual employee, but that's not really the role of the job. It's a consulting basis.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone have any questions or comments about these personnel items before we move on? Okay, if not, Mrs. Gould isn't with us tonight, so I will take us through instruction and program. We have, let's see, we have actually no workshops under number 1. We do have, we will have at the next meeting, student teacher will be approving from William Patterson University. We will also be approving employee leave of absence. Number 3, I believe that's it under IMP. Any questions or comments? Okay. If not, let's move on to policy revisions. Mr. Lewis, would you care to move us through that item tonight?
I would be happy to. Next week, 2 weeks from now, we will be going over and voting on the first reading of policy 4150, discipline.
Dino, I have a quick question for Dr. Forte.
Go ahead, Mike.
This is James. Dr. Forte, should we expand on the title? Because discipline seems a little too general. I remember from the meeting you said it was discipline for non-certificated staff, right? Or something like that? Or or am I just sort of barking up the wrong tree?
It's actually the title of the policy from our policy company. So the 4,000s have to do with certificated staff, non-certificated. The 3,000s have to do with certificated, and the 5,000s have to do with students. The fact that it's in a 4,000, I know it's a lot, but in the 4,000, it means it's for non-certificated staff.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If nothing else, Mr. Kim, would you move us through finance items for our next meeting?
Sure will. Either myself or someone else during our next board meeting will move the following under finance. Number 1 will be the list of checks once we have that information. And number 2 will be for the 1-year contract for the school physician services, not to exceed $2,000. And finally, to accept the donation from Donor Choose for Lakeview School in the amount of $330 for classroom books.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. Steve, just for the sake of the public, do you know what Donor Choose is or where that money comes from?
Donor Choose is when anybody can put something out there. You can put it out and say, like, I really want to buy these desks. And then somebody can look at it and say, I'll fund it for you. And that's basically what it is. So a teacher at Lakeview put out that they wanted these certain books, put it on Donors Choose, and somebody decided to fund it.
Right, so like a GoFundMe for education.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, any comments or questions on these items from the board?
And I'll just mention, when they do donors choose, if it's something, they usually always, well, they always do check with their principal, and then principals always check with me to make sure it's something that goes along with our programming.
Got it, thank you, Cindy. If nothing else, let's move to go to the call-ons. I know we've all received the committee reports from this week. Any follow-up questions, comments on any of those? All right, if not, we can move on to discussion items. We've obviously discussed the budget, and we're going to follow up individually with Damaris and Mr. Kim this week. What would we like to, and do we have any suggestions about the meeting highlights for this week?
I guess budget discussion, demographic discussion, and I mean, you don't have to have three. That's probably the biggest things, right? Discussion of a demographic study and a discussion of the budget.
Kindergarten enrollment.
Kindergarten enrollment too. Sure. There we go.
When we do that, we should mention that the kindergarten enrollment is open and is still open. Sorry, last week and it is still open. So anybody out there?
Yeah. Did anyone see it on the sign this week? It's on the sign out, you know, at the, you know, the reach board. Yeah.
Downtown sign, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, and we have a note, obviously, we're going to adopt preliminary budget at our March 8th meeting, and we have the public hearing for the school budget April 26th. So the public can take note of that. Are there any other items anyone would like to discuss at this point under go to the polls?
I have one.
Go ahead, Matt.
I got an email from Assemblyman Brian Bergen. Many of you know he's a Denville resident. And he sent a link to haydenscorner.org. I don't know if anybody else is on his email list. And the Hayden family is was a classmate of Brian's at West Point. And they lost their son to suicide just a couple of weeks before his 13th birthday. And so the family has embarked on a mission to avoid this happening to other children. And there's a video on there. You can write this down, haydenscorner.org, and look at the video. It's about 16 minutes. And I found a real sad statistic there that the second leading cause of death for 11 through 17-year-olds is suicide. And he talked about the COVID shutdown, where the kids are having little to no social interaction with their classmates and their teachers, reliance on the video games. And they have a psychologist in the video who talked about interventions, what parents can do to surface the situation out before it becomes the death of a child. They also talked about doing more on the educational side with resilience classes for kindergarten through 12th grade, and a parent school administrator campaign to educate the kids and parents about responsible gaming and oversight of the gaming activity, as well as talking to their kids. I probably would need to see it, the video a second time. There's a lot of very detailed and complicated information in there. But I know we've done a lot with students' emotional and mental health the last couple of years. We put a tremendous amount of money and resources in there to make sure we're doing the best we can for the kids. But I'm just wondering, after watching this video and reading the story, if we could do more. So something maybe the curriculum committee take a look at. But I would recommend taking a look at the video. But that's just an alarming statistic And that's the, I mean, kids between the ages of 11 and 17 shouldn't be dying. I know every now and then there's some serious illnesses that they get, cancer, etc. But suicides just shouldn't happen. I think a lot of these are preventable. So take a look at that, and I think it's something that we could take a look at, make sure we're doing everything that we can to give these kids an opportunity to talk to somebody and identify this before it becomes a critical situation.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. You said it was HaydensCorner.org.
Correct.
I watched the video too, Don. It was very moving.
Yeah, it was.
It's hard not to get emotional watching that. This is your typical kid, like the demo kid there. He plays sports, went fishing with his grandfather. This was a regular kid, and it ended up like this for him. It's really, really tragic.
Anyone else?
Hey, Dino, can I just make one quick mention?
Go ahead, Mike.
I know that we have a lot of staff members that are going above and beyond lately. I just wanted to point out too that I have either personally interacted with recently or have seen what they've done. Our maintenance staff has done a phenomenal job with the amount of snow we have had. The way they clear the schools and make sure that they're safe for the kids to get in. Just kudos to them and the hard work they're putting in with everything going on. That's in addition to all the extra cleaning and everything they're doing inside the schools. So just a great job from that staff. And then our health staff, the nurses at all the schools, and in particular, Miss Seidel it's just phenomenal what they're doing and stepping up above and beyond, and on weekends and nights and answering emails at all sorts of times. I know everybody's stepping up, but just recently those were two that I've kind of either interacted with or seen what they've done. And I wanted to just give a quick thank you to all of them for the extra work they're putting in, well above and beyond what they expected to do. And that's what's getting us through this year is all the staff doing what they can. So thank you to those two groups in particular and the entire staff.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. I know we have these discussions sometimes between board members and the public and the administration, but it's good you bring that up. Obviously, the appreciation is deep and they're doing a tremendous job. So thanks for bringing that up. All right, if there's nothing else, I'm going to open up for public comments, second public comment session of the evening. It is 9:01. If you're online and would like to ask a question or make a comment, you can just type it in the chat and we'll recognize you.
There's no public on the virtual call.
Okay, seeing no one on the virtual call and seeing no one in the chambers, I'm going to close the public comments at 9:01 p.m.
Move adjourn.
I was going to say we don't have any for executive session tonight.
No, we do not.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.